Hi everyone, welcome to What You Need to Know About Travel Insurance. My name is Lauren Paterno, work in government and public affairs here at AAA Northeast. Travel is finally on the rise in the US. As vaccination rates are increasing, more and more people are feeling comfortable dipping their toes back into travel. However, restrictions are changing quickly, so planning a trip can still be a little tricky. Travel insurance can give you the peace of mind and the protection you need when planning a trip. I have one of our trusted travel advisors, Wendy Marley, here to share her knowledge of travel insurance with us. Thank you, Wendy, for being here today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Okay, so speaking from experience, I honestly never thought much about travel insurance until I was traveling during COVID or towards the end of COVID when my parents were vaccinated, but still my children and my husband were not. We wanted the right protection for our family, and we chose a plan that worked for us. For those who don't know, what are the benefits to travel insurance?
Yes, so benefits to having travel insurance are, one, they definitely, if you need to cancel prior to your trip, very important to have that because you just never know what can happen last minute. It also covers trip interruptions. So if for some reason, say you land in your destination and something happens right away and you need to interrupt your trip and come home due to a medical reason, then you're able to recoup the losses for the rest of your trip. You can also, luggage is included. So if it's lost or stolen, gets left behind on the tarmac, who knows what happens, you can put in a claim. It also covers you while you're traveling for medical expenses. So should you need to see a doctor or go to a hospital, if you need medical evacuation, that's covered under it. So there's many different things to consider. It's not just a cancellation insurance, although that is, primary reason why I believe a lot of people will take it. But it's very important to have it for on the trip benefits as well.
So I know there are different kinds of plans. How can a traveler decide what plan might be best for them?
Yes, so always highly recommend speak to your local AAA travel advisor. It's a great idea. They will be able to go over the different plans, let you know what the different restrictions are or requirements in the destination that you're going to. For example, if you're going to Costa Rica, you may not have known that they require you to have at least $50,000 per person in emergency medical expenses. You have to show proof of having that insurance in order to enter the country. That's something an advisor can certainly let you know and make sure that you're covered for and choose the right plan. Plans vary based on the amount of coverage that you'd like to have, based on if you want a traditional plan where you can cancel for a covered reason, or if you want to have something that's a little bit more flexible should something else unexpected come up.
Now, I know some plans, there is sometimes because of COVID, the way things are changing so quickly, somebody might decide that they don't want to travel anymore because of COVID restrictions, or they can't travel because of COVID restrictions. What do you recommend in that situation?
So insurance plans, there are different ones out there. There are some cancel for any reason plans, so that's certainly something a AAA advisor can go over with you. However, a lot of plans, you still can't mention that you're canceling because of fear of COVID. So you just want to make sure you can cancel because you just no longer want to travel, you're having a bad hair day, your pet is sick, but mentioning that you don't want to travel due to fear of COVID is a restriction. So you just want to make sure that you go over that with your advisor and find out what's going to be the best option for you.
Okay, so that's important. So if you do have, if you are making your trip and you're planning, you don't want to say that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, having said that, if you were to contract COVID prior to traveling, for example, many countries, they require you now to test typically about 3 days prior to travel, although they all have their own restrictions and their own time frame, but majority are about 3 days before travel, you need to have a negative COVID test. If for some reason you were to test positive prior to your trip, typically now you're usually within 100% penalty and you would need to cancel your trip because you would be denied entry. If that were to happen, you'd want to have travel insurance because that is something that they do cover, testing positive for COVID prior to travel. They also do cover you while you're traveling if you need medical attention and were to contract COVID, or if you were then required to quarantine in your destination because you had contracted COVID. So those are some important things where insurance companies have relaxed their policies. One of the ones that we work with has done that. And so the advisor will be able to go over that information and let you know any of your concerns you have around that. So it does cover some things, but you cannot say you don't want to travel due to fear of COVID.
Okay, thank you. That's very important to know. So let's talk about cost for a moment. I know when I was researching a plan, I was a little nervous and hesitant to get a plan because I thought it was going to be some additional cost and it was going to be a burden on the trip. Then I spoke to one of our agents and she really honestly eased my concerns quite quickly. And she gave me a quote that was extremely manageable and totally beneficial to our trip. And, you know, we went with the plan. How are quotes calculated and what should a family or traveler budget for when they're anticipating getting a policy?
So very generally, usually around 8 to 10% of the total trip cost that you're prepaying up front is what you should budget for. There are some things that come into play where children 17 and under with some plans are free. So that's an added benefit for families that you don't have to pay for them, but you still get the same coverage for them. But you ideally, again, you want to go over with your advisor what the different options are because they can vary in cost. A lot of them are based on age and the cost of the trip, but generally 8 to 10%.
Okay. Now, can you add on an insurance policy at any time, or is there a cutoff time? When do you recommend getting an insurance policy? Is it at the beginning?
Yes, highly recommend doing it when you do your first initial deposit. Because what happens is, if for some reason you needed to cancel and you didn't add it on, say, for a couple of days later, once something has happened, you can no longer purchase insurance to cover that event, right? So you're taking that chance. Many policies, if it is a cancel for any reason, are required at time of deposit. Other policies are required within 14 days of your initial deposit. And that basically protects you in case you or any immediate family members have pre-existing medical conditions. If that was a reason that you needed to cancel, you would be covered so long as you had purchased the policy within 14 days. The same goes for supplier default. If a supplier were to, say, an airline or a cruise line or hotel were to file for bankruptcy, supplier default is covered, again, so long as you've purchased it within 14 days. Now, there is another option. If you say we're not interested in covering your trip for cancellation, which I don't recommend, but if you were not, I just wanted it for on-the-trip benefits, such as the emergency medical expenses or the emergency medical transportation. That's something you can purchase the insurance up until 24 hours prior to your trip in order to be covered for those on-the-trip benefits.
Okay, so it sounds like at least 2 weeks prior to leaving for your trip. Is that accurate? You want to do it most likely right at the beginning when you're making you're finalizing your plans, but it sounds like you have 2 weeks prior to leaving, roughly.
No, you want to do it 2 weeks within 2 weeks of making the deposit. So as soon as you put money down, you want to make sure within 2 weeks after that you have purchased the insurance. So ideally right away, maximum 2 weeks. You can purchase it after that, but you will not be covered for pre-existing conditions. You will not be covered for supplier default. And then you're taking that chance that something comes up, a medical condition or anything happens where you would potentially need to cancel, maybe losing money at that point, and now you're not covered for that reason because you didn't have the insurance prior to it happening.
Okay, so that's extremely important. So basically, if you are a family or a traveler who is planning a trip and you do not want to lose your money and you want to make sure you get the most out of your coverage, within 2 weeks of finalizing your trip, you want to book your travel insurance.
Right, well, the initial deposit. So even if you haven't made final payment, just making that first payment towards your trip, whether you bought an airline ticket, reserved a hotel, or done a package, just whenever you make that first payment, that's when the clock starts ticking.
Okay, so the first payment. Okay, so no matter whether it's the hotel or the flight or whatever it is, just when you initiate the first payment of whatever it is towards your trip.
Exactly. So always a good idea just to talk about all aspects of your vacation when you start planning. Talk about doing the air, the hotels, the insurance, everything at once, so you have the big picture before you start putting down money on things, so that you know what the trip is going to cost and what you need for coverage. You want to plan it out. You don't want to kind of get caught and realize, oh, gee, I should have done this in the beginning. So again, that's something a AAA travel advisor would be able to help you with. Highly, highly recommend discussing it with someone because really they're the professionals and are able to give you the best advice.
All right, thank you so much. And I actually have a lot of questions coming in, but we'll save those for the end. Okay, so next, we talked about this a little bit in regards to medical emergencies, but I know that travel insurance can cover medical emergencies. Can you talk about this a little bit more and what that looks like for a plan?
Yes. So if for some reason while you're traveling, again, I've had clients who, you get to Europe and all of a sudden you're tired, you're jet lagged, your hotel isn't ready yet. So of course you're out, you're sightseeing, taking pictures, and all of a sudden those cobblestones, they jump up and get you. Trip, fall, break an ankle. Now, are you going to be in a cast walking around these cities in Europe for the next 2 weeks? More than likely not. At that point, then you would probably end up canceling the rest of your trip and coming home. So that's something where the insurance would cover you if you needed to then, whether you needed an ambulance ride or you went to the hospital, the cost would be covered for the cast, for any medications or anything that you needed. So that's something where your own health insurance, many people will say, well, I have my own health insurance and they'll cover that. You want to definitely double check with your insurance. Because it depends. You could be out of network. You don't know, that hospital at that time. You just know that you need to have treatment. You could have a high deductible that you have to pay, quite a bit before any coverage kicks in. Or even after that, it could be a high percentage that then you're responsible for. With the medical insurance, most of the plans that we offer have medical as a primary. Primary meaning that you can just use the insurance and not have to make a claim through your own personal insurance. So you can just easily have everything taken care of, not have any out-of-pocket expenses, and have to worry from that point. So that's important.
That's great. And now that would cover anybody on the trip that you have that is covered under the policy. If you have a child, anybody, correct?
Yes, anybody that you have put on the policy would be covered for that.
Wow, okay, that's really great to know. All right, so now we know that the cruising is finally starting to pick back up a little bit. Is there any additional benefits to travel insurance when you're booking a cruise?
So an exclusive benefit we have with one of our insurance carriers is the missed port of call. That's something that is great. When I was on a cruise back in September of 19, we were headed to Bermuda. And what happened was a hurricane was, of course, forecasted to hit the island on the last day we were in port. So we were supposed to be there 3 days, ended up leaving after 2 in order to try to get out ahead of the storm. When I got back, I was able to make a claim. They'll give you $100 per missed port, up to 3 ports, just for your inconvenience. So that's something that's great. Plus, with all the itineraries changing, different government regulations, if you're on your cruise and all of a sudden something changes with the regulations and you can't go into that port, that would be another reason that you could then come home, file a claim, and have a $100 reimbursement just for not being able to make it.
Wow, okay, so that's great added security if you're going on a cruise.
Yes.
All right, so we do have a few questions that are coming in.
Okay.
One is in regards to travel to Hawaii. So Hawaii requires a negative COVID test 72 hours prior to entry into the state. They're asking what would happen if you failed your test, would insurance cover it?
So if you failed your test, if you tested positive for COVID and you had travel insurance, then yes, that is a covered reason to cancel your trip and recoup your losses.
Okay, that's comforting. And also, does the trip interruption insurance cover anything beyond medical reasons? For instance, death in the family, at home, those kinds of reasons.
Yes, injury, sickness, or death, you or an immediate family member is covered for cancellation as well as trip interruption.
Okay, that's good. And who does AAA work with for insurance?
We work with Allianz Insurance, which is an incredible worldwide company. They have a large footprint all over the world with negotiated rates through different hospitals, through different emergency medical carriers. So really, they help keep the cost down. And as long as you have worked with an advisor, chosen an adequate plan for, say, international versus domestic, you shouldn't have any out-of-pocket expenses if you've chosen the right one. And again, they keep those costs down so that everything is within the parameters of the policy that you've purchased, which is helpful.
Great. Finally, for anybody watching today, what should they do if they're interested in a policy for their upcoming trip?
So if you're interested, absolutely reach out to your local AAA travel advisor. They would be more than happy to go over the different policies with you, whether you've booked your trip already, if you are in the planning stages, or even if you booked your trip on your own and it wasn't at AAA. Definitely reach out to us because we'd be more than happy to add that on, go over the information, and help you with any additional benefits that you need for your trip.
How is the best way to get in contact with a trip advisor like yourself?
So you can call your local AAA, or on the back of your card, the 1-800 AAA number. You can call that as well and be set with an advisor.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Wendy, for sharing your expertise today. We really appreciate it. And you reinforced I'm glad I got travel insurance, and you reinforced why I'll continue to get travel insurance, especially traveling with young children, because you just never know what happens when you travel.
Yeah.
Thank you. And please, if you are interested in travel insurance or working with one of our travel agents, please feel free to reach out to us, and you can contact us at AAANortheast.com as well. Thank you, everyone, and safe travels.
Thank you.